A UN inquiry into the use of chemical weapons in Syria has got off the ground as investigators in Damascus officials finally reach an agreement. The probe was stalled as the UN demanded full access to Syrian facilities, which the authorities denied. And another breakthrough has been reached in New York. A key rebel group has agreed to take part in a peace conference aimed at resolving the two-year war in Syria after meeting with Security Council members. But as Marina Portnaya explains, there are conditions attached.
What those preconditions are, it's hard to detect. It seems as though they want to make sure that Syrian President Bashar al-Assad has no authority following the Geneva II meeting. And another precondition, possibly, that once a transitional government is established, that transitional government would have full authority over the security and the military in Syria. There's a lot of back and forth with the wording. What the Russian ambassador to the UN really underscored here is that all this talk prevents the Geneva II meeting from actually moving forward and taking place.
They were mentioning, among other things, that they needed more weapons, etc., etc. So, and some other remarks they were making sort of were leading in the direction of further conflict, which would with no obvious end in sight.
It is no secret that the Syrian opposition would like to receive the weapons and arms and military aid that the Obama administration recently promised to provide to the rebels fighting against Syrian President Bashar al-Assad. It is clearly, assumed that the delegation representing the Syrian opposition that's here in New York discussed that issue with U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry. Now, before they began their bilateral meeting on Thursday, Secretary Kerry said that there could be no military solution to the Syrian crisis, only a political solution. But if that is the case, many ask, why would Washington be shipping more weapons and arms to a country that is in the midst of a civil war that is now reaching 2.5 years? So we have this meeting taking place and a lot of talk, but it seems as though the positions still remain, and there has been no date yet set for this Geneva II meeting that is co-organized, co-sponsored by Russia and the U.S.
War campaigner Eugene Poirier told us that Western-backed attempts to topple the Assad regime only stir up a hornet's nest in Syria, rendering peace efforts useless.
The United States and the United Kingdom, France, other Western nations have really made clear that they will only accept the fall of Assad. And despite the fact that they continually try to say that they're for peace negotiations, it seems at every turn, whether it's sending arms to the rebels, whether it's sending them quote-unquote non-lethal aid, money in general, supporting the Gulf countries that are also supporting them, that really all of the talk about peace is disingenuous. And unlike Russia and other countries, they seem very bound and determined to push forward the Syrian rebels as the new leadership of the country, regardless of the situation on the ground. When Russia and the United States were originally trying to promote the Geneva II conference, we saw that the Syrian rebels essentially said that they had no intention of negotiating until the situation on the ground changed. That is, until they gained the military upper hand. So from their perspective, they seem only willing to negotiate if the military situation allows them to have the upper hand in negotiations. But if they seem to be losing the war, if it seems that support for them inside of the country is dropping, all of a sudden they have no desire to negotiate and they only want to continue to push war, which is the subtext of this entire meeting, where on the sidelines they have been pushing for more and more military aid from the United States and for it to come significantly quicker.
On the ground, the Syrian army, reportedly backed by Hezbollah squads, has been advancing in rebel-held neighborhoods in the central city of Homs. Media reports suggest that opposition groups there are also infiltrated by mercenaries. Political strategy analyst Chris Levitina says the involvement of foreigners is making a bad situation even worse.
There are so many factions that have so much influence with this coalition, and even the Assad government has brought in others, outsiders, if you will, to sort of prop up their government, that there doesn't seem to be any particular group that can claim to be in charge of one side or the other. The whole situation has become balkanized. The last thing people in America want is to get into another situation a la Iraq, which is very confusing. We never really picked a side to be on that seemed to be the right side. And 10 years after our invasion, there doesn't seem to be any kind of coalition around a governing body that all Iraqis can agree on.